Good afternoon, folks. I got a new webcam and I messed up all my computer settings regarding webcam, so you won't get to see my pretty face in this one. But that's okay. Maybe next time. So we need to take a look at where we're going. And it looks like we are ready to move on to the last part that we need for the user sign-up assignment. So let's go ahead and take a look at the prep work here, because I wanted you guys to look at that before we met today. Because it's going to be the assignment's due on the 22nd, and today will be the last day of material that we need to finish it. If you are working on anything still and you're stuck, please do ask questions either right now or email me, and we can set up a time to do a Zoom meeting. Trying to bring up the chat here. Okay. All right. So we're ready to move on to flick list 4. Yes. Right, and our prep work. For that was taking a look at the template language Jinja 2. It always makes me think of gingivitis. And it lets you add in some logic to your web page templates. But I guess we should talk about templates first. All right. And so there's some guided lessons here that you can look at. If you haven't already, you'll want to go through these to make sure you don't get stuck on the assignment. All right, so what is a template? Well, so far in our code, how have we been building our HTML pages? So right now, we've just been creating giant strings and piecing them together. All right. So we have the top of the page here, the footer, and then different forms that get used, but they're all just giant strings in the main code. And so eventually this is going to get too cluttered to manage. So what we can do is create a template file that we use to build the page. All right, and we need to move these strings out of the main body, the main.py, and we'll be creating new files to hold the templates. Right. All right, and so with templates, it allows you to manage your site a lot easier with different pages and things. So let's go ahead and take a look at the flick list. So we're going to refactor the code from using these strings to using templates. So we're going to take a look at walkthrough 4. Or which walkthrough are we on? Let's see. So remember, we are switching branches and Git to see where we are. So we looked at walkthrough 1, we looked at walkthrough 3. I think we're on walkthrough 4. Let's see, either that or we just start with the last one we did. So to switch, we do git checkout, and then the name of the branch. Let's see, there might not be a walkthrough 4. Oh, looks like there is. Okay. And then remember, after you switch, then your file is going to be different. And I want to show you how to reopen this. So once you switch to the right branch, all you have to do is do code space dot. That opens Visual Studio Code. And it opens this folder. All right, so this will look a lot like what we ended with last time. So they might have done things slightly different, so now we have different terrible movies. Let's make sure it works before we make any changes, so we're not wasting our time. And to do that, we'll start up the server. So if you do have the server running and you want to stop it, you just have to hit Control-C, and that'll exit out of whatever process is running. And then make sure you're in the right folder, and then you use Python to open or run main.py. That should start the server. And now we can Control-click to open the page. All right, so let's see. Adding, that works. Go back, cross it off. All right, so everything that's added now kind of works, kinda. We basically have the structure of the page built. Okay, so we're going to be moving these strings into template files, and we're going to need to set up the template file using Jinja. So let's see. I'm just going to look ahead here for the syntax so I don't have to keep looking it up. So I'll just go to GitHub. And I'll look in my flick list. And we want to look at the code of walkthrough 4. All right. No, not walkthrough 4. That's where we're starting. Studio 5. Let's make sure. Conflict list 4. Yes. And I should be able to double check that by seeing what branches we already have in the terminal by doing git branch. So we only have up to Studio 3 right now, so let's go ahead and check out the Studio 4 branch. Actually, I don't want to check it out because that'll change what we're editing. We want to just see the code of Studio 4. Alright. So now, first things first, we need to create a folder to hold our templates inside of our project folder. Okay. So you can use the graphical user interface in Visual Studio Code to do this. So if I just go click in here, and then we can do new folder, and you can name it, or you can do it in the terminal by typing mkdir for make directory, and it has to be called templates, all lowercase, because that is the place the template engine is going to look to load its templates. Okay, and then we should be able to see that if we refresh. Let's see. Make sure it made it. Yeah, it's in there. And then you can add, you'll have to add this to the repository. So we want to do git add dot, and then we want to do git commit -m added templates folder. Okay. So we may have to manually add this. So if you git add templates, and then we do git commit added templates folder. I'll just reopen Visual Studio Code here. Oops. Alright, there we go. That was probably there, I just didn't see it. Okay, this is where we'll be storing our template files. And so we'll be able to remove all the strings and parts of the pages, the HTML. We can basically strip all of that out and put it in templates. And then we can stick to the logic in the Python here. Alright, so we have our template folder. Templates. It's important that you do that. Alright. And we are going to add, for now, 3 files in there. base.html, crossoff.html, and edit.html. So we can go back into the terminal. We want to put these in the templates folder. So let's go, we need to go into the templates folder, so cd templates, and you can, again, you can do this in the Visual Studio Code, but it's good practice to do it in Linux. Okay, in here, do you remember how to make a file? It's a weird name. We touch it. So if I do touch base.html, and I do touch crossoff.html, and we do touch edit .html. Okay, and so we're creating these basic templates to use for the site, but you will potentially add more, or you might go in and edit some of these as you change how the website's going to look. Right. So we've got those files created. Let's see if they're in here. Yep. And here it's trying to help me out by saying these 3 files are not part of the repository. Okay, so we need to make sure they get added. Let's see if we can just do this. You don't want to do it in this folder, because our repository is in the folder that's above this. So remember to go back up. It's cd ... cd space ... That brings you up to the parent folder, parent directory. And then in here, this is where the repository is tracked in a hidden folder that you're not supposed to mess with manually. That's why it's hidden. So if you do ls space -a, it'll show you the hidden folders. So we have the dot that represents this folder, 2 dots that represent the parent folder, and then if you ever want to hide a file in Linux, you just put a dot in front of it, hide a file or folder. And so here this .git is a folder. So if I go cd.git, we can see this is where all the changes are stored whenever we commit. And so you really don't need to mess around in here. I just wanted to show you. It's hard to understand what a repository is, because if you understand files are saved on your computer, and a local repository is just tracking the changes to those files and storing that information in a separate file, that may make it easier to understand. So until you commit it, it's not part of the repository. It's still on your computer, it's just not part of the repository. Okay, so we want to go back up out of this folder before we break anything. And what was I doing? We were going to add these files. So let's try git add dot, and then we can do git commit created template HTML files. Oh, I forgot my -m. There we go. Telling it to include that message. All right. So it's showing me it added the base.html, cross off, and edit. All right, and now we want to make sure we get those onto the remote repository. So we'll go ahead and do git push, and that will push both of the commits that we've done. Should also change my name back. This is one of those things you don't do all that often. There we go. Git config global username. So remember, if we want to paste into the terminal, it's Control-Shift-V. I think it may not be these brackets. Oops. All right. And so now when I push to the remote server, it will use the name that I provided. So we got that set up. There's a lot of setup when you convert to templates. But if you ever do a web app on your own, you can just start by planning on what you would include in your templates. All right. So we have those. Now, the base.html file, we're going to grab out basically the code that we have in the string here. And the idea behind a base.html is this is a file that will represent all the parts of your website, of each web page, that'll basically stay the same. So you probably have the same header and footer on each page, and whatever else you have, maybe a navigation menu. Those kind of things you can include on every page by putting them in the base.html. And then you'll leave a giant hole in the middle to fit any other template you want. And so if someone goes to the crossoff page, it'll use crossoff.html. And then if they add something, I believe that's the edit.html. We'll see. Okay, so let's find that in our main.py. So page header is here. All right, and so we check here. We're going to copy all of that stuff and the closing footer and move it into the template. All right. We want to remove the Python code though, so we'll get rid of this. Denoting a block string and multi-line string, and then this declaring a variable. You don't put that in a HTML file. We will use some code in the HTML file, but it's the Jinja 2 template language that we'll use. So we need to get rid of these quotes, and this. Just everything that's part of the Python we want to get rid of. Okay, so we have our header and we have our footer, and now we'll use Jinja to tell it between these two you can insert other templates as pieces. And so to use Jinja in HTML, what we do is and it's easy if you stick with proper indentation for HTML here. So, whoops, I missed a curly brace. So to use Jinja, you have to use a special delimiter to tell whatever is interpreting this to start interpreting the Jinja language, Jinja 2. And that delimiter is open curly brace, %. So when it sees this, it'll say, okay, now write some Jinja code. So we are creating a block called content here, and that's how you declare a block. And then when you're done writing the Jinja code, you use the closing delimiter, which just is the opposite of the opening. So we have % first and then closing bracket. Okay, and then this is all we need. Now we can create other templates and then use them combined with the base template to control what appears on the page. Much easier than just managing a bunch of strings, because we can look exactly at the page we need by just opening the file. And one thing that's good about separating your work into different files is then different people can work on different files at the same time without having conflicts in GitHub, which we don't have to deal with because we're the only ones using this repository. Okay. So we'll go ahead and save that. And we did remove that code from main.py. So we need to find those variables and get rid of any references to those. So we got rid of page header and page footer. So we need to remove those. And it's nice enough to tell me, hey, you haven't declared this variable yet, so it's easy to find these. Perfect. Oops. Oh, I just haven't saved. There we go. So if it's telling you there's errors, just save. That'll allow it to interpret your changes. Right. And we'll look for any more of those. Here's another set. Can get rid of that. Get rid of that. And the last one. All right. So we've added the template files and we removed those strings. So let's test it to see if it still works. And then we can commit those changes. So I saved it. The server detected the changes and reloaded. Now we can come back here and we want to refresh the page. All right, so the header and footer are gone. Let's make sure everything still works. So we're doing our own QA here. Quality assurance. All right, everything still works, so we're good to commit that. How about before we do that, let's actually test what we added. All right, so how do we start using this Jinja? So we need to import another tool here. And we need to import render template from the Flask package. Trying to keep track of everything. I talked about extensions, add-ons earlier today, but these are packages. So we'll just stick that right after our other imports. Now that we have that, this is a function that allows you to pass in an HTML file and variables from the code, and then it'll build the page for you using the template. So now we can utilize the template. How do we tell it to use a template? Let's go down to one of our routes. Okay, and I just realized that's probably hard to see, so I'll zoom in. All right, all of this stuff is the same, except here we see the, no, I think, nope, that's from something else, right here. Instead of returning a string, we are going to return the result of render template crossoff.html, so that's one of our templates, and we're going to pass in the value for the crossed off movie. And so in the template for crossoff.html, we'll be able to handle that we'll be able to handle the creating the page and using that variable. Okay. So we can't do much right now with just the base template. So let's go ahead and create the edit template, because I believe that is the one with the form. Let's double check that. Edit.html. So to make a template that will be usable by the base template, you have to include at the beginning of the file this code right here, extends base.html. That means it can go where we set the content block in base.html. And here is the reference to the block, the content block. And then here's all the form code for adding a movie and crossing off a movie. All right, and then we need, they're using an if statement in Jinja down here, and they're actually using a loop, a for loop in Jinja up here. It looks fairly similar to Python. It just has a few syntax differences. And so here they're using the, what are they using this for loop for? Does it help if I make it visible? Probably. All right. So take a look at this for loop. Do you remember what these options are? So an option, that's a sub-element of the select element. And what does this build? This is our drop-down, right? So to use this template, what we're going to do is we're going to pass in our list of movies to the template. And then when it's generating the page, it'll run this for loop on every item in the list and build the HTML for it. All right, and then down here there's an if statement that can check if an error has been passed in, then you can print that out. If not, then don't print out the error. And then you have to have this end block. Okay. So let's grab this. Okay. And I'm going to take out the parts that this is. Wait, which one is it? This is the edit. Okay. Shut that down for a second. So we'll just get rid of this. Oops. We're going to keep the for loop in here for now, just for the syntax, and we'll get rid of this. Okay, so we have the telling it that it will be part of base.html, and it's the block called content. So we have our opening block statement here and our closing here. Now you have to be specific on when these open and close for Jinja. So for your for loops, you have to tell it, instead of using curly braces or indents to denote your blocks of code, you have to use an opening and closing delimiter, which is, in this case, this statement for a for loop, and here's your closing. You have to tell it end the for loop here. Same with if. You tell when the block of code for the if is over down here. Okay. So we want to move everything from that form out of our main.py and put it into edit.html. So let's find that. So here's our add form there. And then here's our cross-off form. Okay, and these are just back to back, so we can grab this one and we'll stick that in our template. This will make the main.py a lot easier to read. and we want to put this in edit.html, and we want to put it at the beginning of the content. Okay, so we can stick that in there, and you want to get you want to get rid of the Python code. And now we can grab and so I'm removing this from the main.py. I'm actually cutting it out. We don't need this comment anymore because we won't need both. All right. And so here we were using a for loop in Python to generate the options that we're going to use for the cross-off form. And so we won't be needing that anymore because we'll be generating those options in the template. Okay, so we can get rid of that. Okay, we don't need to move it because we won't do that anymore. And we can get rid of the actual for loop here so that it doesn't cause an error. Okay, and then we don't need this variable anymore, and we don't need this part. Alright, so that leaves us with the HTML. And let's throw that in, and then we'll have to edit it to fit the new for loop. So I'm going to cut that out. And we'll put it, I'm going to wait to save so I can undo if I need to. Okay, and so right under the add form, we're going to stick the cross-off form. All right. And instead of using a for loop to generate the string of options, we're going to move this for loop from Jinja and replace this whole part, which is right here. And this will be the for loop that generates our options, which are the options in our drop-down list. All right. Whoops. All right. And so here, like I said earlier, it'll be passing in a list from the main.py into the template engine, which will use the variables you pass in and the template to build the page. So we're going to be passing in a list of movies, and then the for loop will grab each movie out of the list one at a time, and we can just use this. Here is how Jinja notates a variable. It's two curly braces, and so here we're setting the value, which will be useful for the form to pass information, and then we will put it here also as the text that displays, which will be useful for the person trying to decide what to pick. All right, so we'll go ahead and save that, and we'll save the main.py. All right, and then we have one more thing, which is the error code down here. Let's fix that later. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save all. Oop, I guess everything's saved. So these M's show me that I've modified these files. What does it say here? And you can go into the text editor and see these were the lines that were removed. These are the changes that were made. So these three files were modified since the last commit. All right, and let's go ahead and test it. I think I might have forgot something, but we'll see. This will remind me what I forgot. Make sure the web server didn't crash. Okay, it's still running and it restarted. And we want to refresh the page. And okay, since we deleted the Python code that created the add form variable and the cross off form variable, we got to get rid of the references to those, or else it'll get confused. So we got to look back through here, find those. Here's a couple. Get rid of those for now. Save it. Looks like that may have been the only place. Well, it'll let me know. Which means now that it crashed, we'll have to... Oh, well, since I saved it, it went ahead and started up again. Alright, and we got everything saved here, so we want to test it out again. Let's refresh. Alright. So we have some, this is just leftover text. So now we need to tell it to use the render template function from the Flask package to use the edit.html. So instead of returning a string in our route, so we want it, this is the homepage route or the index route, which is just a /. Alright, instead of return content, which was built of all those strings, we are done using that. So we don't need any of this anymore. And we will return the result of render template, and then we just need to pass in the name of the template. And so we want to use edit.html, and we want to pass in the list of movies. So we can do, and do we want both? No, we just need the list of movies for the cross-off selection box. So we'll do get, this is a little bit weird. You actually name and assign the variable in the arguments of the function. So right here, well, let's see what they called it so we don't have to change it. They called it watch list here. So that means whatever name we could use whatever we wanted. So instead of watch list, we could call it movie list. All right, if we do that, then in here we need to pass in a variable called movie list, and we'll assign into it the value of get current watch list, which is a function we created that grabs the list. So we want to save that. Let me check the code here, make sure I'm on the right track. Okay, so we want to go back to the main.py, so we can look at that. Function call, make sure we have it right. So in the index, alright, so we need to pass in the name of the template as a string, and then here's where we added this, and then later we'll worry about the error, passing in the error. Okay, so this gets the list of movies, passes it into the template builds all those options, and so we're almost ready to see this in action. We want to put this as a string. Okay, I should fix that, and then we've got our variable in there, which will be movie list. Okay. All right. So that's all saved. Check the server. Now we can hopefully see those changes. All right. So now we are using templates. Let's make sure it works. Okay. And that works, and that works still. All right, so now we just have to follow through and add all the other features to stop using strings and start using the template. Let's make sure this list actually worked. Now I believe, wasn't, oh no, that was part of the terrible movies in the terrible movies list. Let's see. I know this one was on there. Nope, I guess not. I thought they added that one in. Let's see. Oh, I misspelled it. Okay. Anyway, why is Ben Affleck in boring movies? It's weird. I guess you take what you can get, right? All right, so now we want to build. Oh, now we want to commit this because it's working. So we do git add dot. Make sure it's typing in there. Okay, that adds everything. And we do git commit dash m. Built the base.html and edit.html templates, removed the code. I'm just going to say removed code. You want to be, concise in these. Removed code for strings in py.main. Because they'll be able to see, this is so you can look back and see when you changed what, and then you can check the differences to actually see what was changed. And I forgot my closing quote there. All right. 3 files were changed. We inserted 61 lines, and we removed 51 because we copied and pasted, so we only added 10 new lines ourselves. And now we're ready to push. So git push, log in. All right. Now we can go to GitHub and let's see if my name change worked. And we're currently editing the walkthrough 3. So I'll switch to that just to look at the code on here. Actually, I'm just trying to look at the commits. Let me zoom out. I can't see what I need. Oops, way too far. Okay, so let's go back up to here. Alright, so John Doe added a redirect 7 days ago. Okay, I'm on, we're on walkthrough 4, I'm sorry. Okay. I was like very confused. Okay. So now it has the right name. This is what we did. We built the base HTML and edit HTML templates, and we removed code for strings. Okay. We can see that there are 30 commits. So here is the things we've done so far. Created template HTML files, and I had the wrong name there. And then here's what we just did. So remember, we're using this so we can keep track of what we're doing. Keep track of the versions. Okay, so now we need to continue through. We still have to add the error message on the edit.html. We're done with the base.html, so we can get rid of that. Alright, and so now let's fix the error thing. So here, when someone makes an error, we're doing a redirect back to the home page. And so on that home page, we need to handle that error by grabbing it out of the query parameter in the URL and passing it into the template. Alright, so we have to change our index route. And so here it's also showing me with yellow underlines. This isn't being used anymore, so we can just get rid of that. And it's showing me that error element if there is a value in error. So when this page loads, we're grabbing the error, and then we're storing the text for the error in a paragraph, storing that in a variable. And then down here, since we're not using that variable, all we have to do is add it in so that the template can use it. So we just add another argument, we'll call it error, and then we pass in the value we assign the value from error element. So if there is no error, it'll be empty. If there is, it'll use this. And how does it know where or how to use this variable right here? We've referenced it in the template. So let's go back to edit, and down here it's checking if there is an error, and then it is going to print out the error here. Okay, they did it a little differently where they included the HTML here, so we can take that out of our main.py. We no longer need to put the HTML here, and we don't even need this variable anymore. We just need this. So really we're just using error escape. Alright, that'll be passed in here. And why is it saying not used? Error element. Oh, I haven't saved, that's why. Alright. So now it'll grab the value out of the address bar, out of the query parameters, which if you have no idea what I'm talking about when I say query parameters, you might want to check out the previous video. Alright, don't put off watching these all in one sitting, please. You'll go insane. Don't wait till the last minute. Alright, so we're passing that in to the template. How many times have I said that? Alright, in the template it has a way to handle a variable called error, which we created. These lines are getting long, huh? Oh, I forgot to turn the word wrap back on. There we go. Then I won't lose my mind. even though it's close to the end of class. Okay, so we have the error. This is the variable we're creating. This is the value we're assigning. The template will be able to use a variable called error. And you can see that right here. So it checks if there is one, print it out. Let's see if it works, and then we can commit. Probably something I forgot. Refresh. No errors yet because we haven't done anything. All right, let's mess up the cross-off form. Let's go ahead and put change one of the values here so it can't find it in the list. Alright, so now if I try to cross off Star Wars, the actual value is gujavijigif. And there's the error, so that worked. And if we try to add that movie, it says you don't want to add Geely to your watch list. Okay. So that worked. Now we're ready to commit that change. So we git add dot. We want to do commit git commit -m added error checking. No, added error display to edit.html. And then we need to, whoops, make sure I saved both files, saved all the files. Okay. If save all is grayed out, that means there's no all to save. Also, I think I already pointed this out, but if you have a big dot next to the file name, that means, warning, you didn't save. You have unsaved changes. Alright, so now that we have that, we can do a git push. So, committing, added it to our local repository, push puts it into the remote. And no problems it looked like, so let's go in here and take a look. Whoops. So if we refresh, now we have the commit we just added. Okay, moving on. What other things? So what did they put in the cross-off form? Let's check that out. Make sure they didn't add anything different. Okay. So we want to go to checkout. So remember, in the real world, the finished version of your code isn't going to exist somewhere for you to use. But you may find code that's similar to what you're doing, and you can reverse engineer it. Just make sure you're aware of what license is attached to that code. A lot of times it's a simple license where you just have to mention, you know, who you got it from. Some of them are stricter, but you just have to pay attention to that. All right, what did they do for cross-off? All right, it looks like just the line with the crossed-off movie is in there. I'm really curious. They must do the add form in the studio. So I'll just copy this in, and then we'll have to change it to use the render template. So this is the edit.html. Nope, cross off. And so we could just copy the code. It's just the string that we use to build this. Okay, so we add cross off form crossoff.html. Remember, for any template you want to stick inside of the base template, you gotta include this extends base.html, and here we are referencing the block that we're putting this in, which is the content block. For now, that's all we're using. It's just a very basic structure. So that means now that we have that template, we need to use it, and let's pay attention to the variables that are used. It's called crossed off movie. Okay. So we need to find the cross off route. Okay. We'll move this so we can see. All right. So here we're getting the crossed off movie from the form data that we submitted. All of this we did this before. All we're doing is, instead of returning a string, we're using the template. So down here in the return, and here we are redirecting back to the home page if they make an error, and we saw that that worked still. But down here, instead of just returning a string about crossing off the movie, we're going to pass that into this function. And remember, what template file do we want this to use? crossoff.html. And what was that variable called that it needs? Crossed off form, I believe. And we assign into it the value of what did I put? Form crossed off movie, and we're pulling that value from crossed off movie that we grab here in the beginning. And so this looks a little bit weird. Because it looks like we're just assigning the value of a variable back into itself. But what we're doing is we're telling this to use the value from this variable in this variable that will be passed into the template. All right, and so we don't need any of this anymore since we're building it in the template. So we are really reducing the number of lines of code in here while doing the same thing and doing it more efficiently. So that's always a good thing. So let's test it before we record our changes. Okay, so we want to go back to the home page and refresh it. Okay, and let's cross off a movie. And there we go. It's working. Okay. So we're ready to git add dot git commit -m, and so what did we do? We changed the cross off route to use the cross off template. Okay, and we can do git push, get that onto the remote repository. So here I'm pushing after every commit. You can collect a few commits, you know, and push them all at once. So you don't have to do this step over and over again. Just commit to the local repository as you make changes, and then any of those changes that you want to be on the remote repository, or when you want them to be on the remote repository, then you can push. Okay. Let's double check that made it on there. I think that's everything. We'll double check here because we got about 2 minutes. Okay, import render template. We looked at Jinja. So the important thing about Jinja that I want you to pay attention to is how we build our templates. So you can always just look at a basic template to look for the syntax. Okay, outside of building templates for a Flask website or web app, I'm not sure if Jinja is used for anything else. Then there might be different template engines that you can use that might be better, but this one's pretty basic. Okay, so you need to know how to structure it so that it works together, and so this stuff will all be the same. I believe in the studio it asks you to create an add .html and switch it over to use that. And this time I might have you guys try the studio on your own, and then next week I might talk a little bit about what you're doing. But you really need to get started on the user sign up. All right. So the other thing is look at how to use if statements in Jinja, and look at how to use for loops, because those are going to help you generate. With an if statement, you can generate different content depending on the context. With for loops, you can put a lot of information without having to manually code it. Okay. So there's that. And so loops and if statements. Okay, so why don't you guys check out the studio. It's going to ask you to, so make sure you check out Studio 4, and then they removed the code for the add route, and you need to create a template for it and connect that route to the template. Right. And then here, they're tired of using the select list. They want to see, they want you to display the watch list in an unordered list with bullets in front of each movie. All right, so you'll have to look at the HTML structure for making a bulleted list. The structure is very similar to select and options, so you should be able to switch that pretty easily. And then they're getting set up for the next part where we can save the watch list. They want you to set it to an empty watch list and use an if statement to say, hey, you don't have any movies on your watch list, instead of trying to print out the list. Otherwise it would just be blank, and you really need to provide guidance for users. Okay. So, well, thank you. Sorry you couldn't see me. But make sure you email me if you have any questions, or you want to have a meeting where I can go over some of this stuff with you if you have questions. Otherwise, I'll see you next week, and have a good day.